Hello, hello, and welcome to Fine, I'll Talk About It, the podcast where we say the quiet parts out loud. Real talk, straight to the point, no fake positivity. I'm your host, Danielle Young, and today I'm joined by Terri Lee-Shield. Terri is a mentor, host, and creative using her personal experiences, intuitive insights, and professional design skills to support people through natural, holistic recovery from trauma, abuse, or neglect. And on today's episode, we are talking about natural intelligence in trauma recovery, holistic well being, and the concerning trends in mental health treatment. Terri, welcome to Fine. I'll talk about it.
Hello, thank you. Nice to see you.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. Why don't we get started by you just telling us a little bit about you and how you got started in this line of work?
Well, I am right on the other side of the world. I'm in the northeast of England. And actually, my journey into this is kind of a combination of personal experience and bringing together everything I've kind of learned from previous work that I did, which is and originally I was a creative, and then I kind of took a tangent into working more with the land and community projects and things. And during that time, working alongside nature, observing nature, patterns in nature, using permaculture design and things, I actually, well, had to, because of my circumstances, started to apply the same principles to my personal recovery. So my history, if you like, is I had, I guess, childhood wounds that I had never dealt with. The culture where I grew up, and a lot of us, the cultures a lot of us grew up in, things were going on. There was no way to talk about it. There was no way it was being addressed. And I just kind of learned to repress so much, just kind of go along in life. And I had like issues coming up throughout my teens and in my early 20s um, that I didn't know how to deal with. So I went through traditional pathways, trying to get help for many, many years. Had experiences being diagnosed with different things, had medications, and just got to a point where I was like, I have to find a solution. Like I couldn't imagine living the way I was for the rest of my life. And something kind of clicked. I can talk about it a bit more if you want, but when I was doing the working with nature, I'd been like reconnecting with nature, and I was looking at patterns and using my design skills to design projects and things. And another kind of traumatic experience had come about, and just a conversation and the kind of timing of everything come together. It was like, oh, I could use this design process and use what I'm learning about how nature works, how nature responds to things for a recovery process. That's like the really quick, short version. Obviously, all this is kind of like spanned decades, if you like, but that's what I do now. Like, that's what I share about. I create courses, mentorship. I do a lot of writing in a blog. I try to talk to people like online, content creation, things like this. Just trying to share my insights that actually what led to my recovery was tapping back into nature, my nature, looking at how, like, I call it an ecosystem mindset, taking on the same mindset that we were maybe innately born with, but have been kind of steered away from, and actually trusting ourselves. So starting to design our own life instead of trying to fit into boxes, instead of being told how we should be, actually like experiencing our life as it is and create using those experiences to create a life that serves us. Um, we're all different, and so that might look slightly different for everyone, but we're all human, so we have these like innate natural needs that are just being bypassed. And it just seems to be like in it, I mean, so that is getting on. So my healing journey in that heal in the natural and holistic space, if you like, was maybe 15 years ago. It was maybe it's getting up to a decade. I'm a bit terrible with time, the time span of it all. When I started using life design and things, But even in that time scale, like it just feels like we've gone on this divergence away, which I kind of thought we would start to maybe make more sense of things, that it was like a something to do with our education or something to do with our communication or something like that, that was meaning we weren't bringing all this stuff together. But actually it just seems to me like we're diverting more and more, and I can't actually believe we're sitting here in like 2026 having conversations about um natural intelligence, about trusting ourselves, about the language used around mental health, about the culture that's leading us, away from what we really need, what we actually really need to heal and recover, and what's causing us to need that healing and recovery journey, and just all of it. So I'm happy to have a chat about the tangents that come up with that, and if you dive into it all.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that we are getting further and further away from, the holistic side of things. When my friends or clients or anybody starts spinning out, I'm like, go touch grass.
Yeah. Just
Go
go for a walk.
just go hug a tree, go touch grass, go be in nature because it is important. I
Breathe.
mean, everything is energy, right? And we ground the most with earth energy.
Yeah. And it's like I say, it just feels, because it's kind of so normal for me now. And that's like my lifestyle is rooted around those practices, and just, well, not even practice anymore. It's just part of how I live. Um, it can just be really strange to see people's responses when you suggest something as simple as like breathing properly, or and to be fair, I am a deep diver as well. So I have really deep dived into understanding psychology, shadow work, um, understanding energy. And like I say, it's all energy. So once you kind of just bringing together all of that, this is why we need this, what I call it, ecosystem mindset. It's why we need the holistic view, because you can't tweak and change one thing and expect it not to affect something else. So I guess it can be really frustrating for people who are in the thick of mental health distress, having trauma symptoms coming up, to have somebody say, "Go for a walk," like, go and like say, just sit, breathe. It can be really frustrating when you're in that world of complicated language. You might be dealing with all of these I'm going to say otherworldly, but societal expectations that actually just kind of trap us completely away from our true nature. And it does just make such a difference to actually get out there and ground yourself. And and it's bypassed. Even just like the simplest things are bypassed as a cause or a contributing factor to why we might be stressed, anxious, why our nervous system is like, this is not right. And it all feeds each other. And my routine, if I, go back and start to really think about when my actual recovery started, because I was, being treated for a long time. When my actual recovery started was when I started looking at just my food and supplement my diet and nutrition and that sort of thing. Because like now it just makes so much sense to me. I can't, you can't unsee it, that if we're not even caring for ourselves properly and considering what we're putting in, how can we expect to be experiencing and getting out? We're not putting good stuff in. How can we expect our minds to be like our brains to be functioning properly, our body systems to be functioning properly, to be thinking clearly, to have the energy we need to go about our day? Never mind then all the expectations that we have of what just functioning and performing often in society is these days.
Yeah.
That's mad.
Yeah, and people think that there needs to be this grand scheme, like this grand plan of, what healing is, and it's like, no, it's just that simple. And it's so hard to believe that it can be that simple because we're taught that we have to do so many things in order to just begin healing. And then something so simple as, you know, look at the food that you eat. A lot of
Yeah.
people don't even consider that.
For me, it's all about or it was, because my unfolding and my journey has been long. It has been over a period of time, and I have explored loads of different things and analyzed them and learned what works for me. And that's what I talk about as a life design process, because we've gotten so used to trusting other people's ideas or data, that we forget that we can do that for ourselves and also have to, because it doesn't really matter whether a certain diet works for me or whether there's a study that says that's the best diet in the world. What matters is, does that particular diet work for you? And why? And once you understand that, you then have knowledge. You've got an actual living, working data on yourself and your body and what it needs. And that can be for like all sorts of different things. And once you open up to that and you start thinking clearly, it might lead to another thing you have to look at.
Mm.
There might be lots of reasons why we haven't been taking care of ourselves properly, just with regards to our diet. And that can bring things up. And I think that's maybe is why I like the healing journey, or when people talk about it, especially people who've been through it a lot. And maybe sometimes even like I do this, it feels like it can be a big thing, but it is actually just moment by moment, day by day, process by process.
Yeah.
Because until you take one step, you don't really know what the next one is. And you don't fully know. You can maybe expect how things might affect one area of your life or another. But like just choosing to change your diet, your food can it can bring up, like I say, all sorts of reasons why we are a certain way, why we eat a certain way, all the emotional attachments we might have to food. But there might be things that we've never even considered, like how it's going to affect our relationships if we suddenly start making different decisions for ourselves around food. Like, how does it affect our working life? How does it affect our productivity, or all this sort of stuff
Yeah.
that we don't really prepare for?
Yeah.
And I think that's like, for me, I always try and like simplify, like say it is just often really simple, but when we have an ecosystem mindset, we can be open to the idea that one small change can affect our lives in many different ways. So we have to like be prepared to kind of deal with that. And that's kind of what natural intelligence is at its core, I think. It's being able to balance both the simplicity, the simplicity of meeting needs, with the complexity of how that might happen. In nature, we have these really intricate, complex ecosystems, but within them, the functions that each living being is bringing to that ecosystem to serve their role and all that can be very simple.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if one simple thing has changed, it can have a ripple effect either way. That can be positive. Well, not really just positive, negative, but it can be much larger than we think when we're conditioned to see everything through a blinker of this is that.
Yeah. Like it's black or white. Like it's
Yeah.
this or it's that. There can be no gray area in between. And it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
there's lots of gray area in between.
Especially when it comes with our growth and things. Like, so my experience with mental health in particular. So I've kind of like had to, or felt like I had to go through a route of pathologization, going to the doctors, having mental health been seen as a medical condition. And there's many reasons culturally and socially for that in the UK, which I'm sure are similar over in the US as well.
Hmm.
You almost like have to do that to legitimize your mental health claim.
Yeah.
Like, I hate the language. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, say, just thinking about it now, it's like, man, like, you have to prove that you're mentally ill. Like, what?
Yep.
I've just said I'm really anxious. Does that not? I'm
Yeah.
getting really stressed right now. My entire life is like falling apart. Is this not proof enough?
Right.
No,
Yeah.
you
No,
must
we need the
legitimize.
label.
Yeah, we must legitimize this claim.
Yeah.
And that whole process then, where you are then almost forced to legitimize distress.
Yeah.
And how does one do that? By ruminating on it, by trying to like just proving yourself in an essence is like, especially something that is going on in your mind and in your body and your emotions. Like, how do you prove something that you're experiencing? Like, and having that, when you do prove that, that's been given a label as then being disordered, being dysfunctional, being somehow broken, damaged. There's now something wrong with you, and you've proven it, right? You've proven it. You've spent all this time
Yep.
having to prove it,
Yep.
um, which is undermining you. Which is, it's just the whole process dehumanizes our experience to a point where we get this contrast and conflict of like we're not supposed to feel, we're not supposed to think differently, we're not supposed to get distressed and explore life. But then life has given us, I don't know a single human that's going to go through life and not experience loss,
Yeah.
grief, confusion, stress, anxiety.
Yeah.
You get given this label, you can get caught in that label. You can then, I mean, not even mentioning the medication route and things, which I don't want to go into because, I'm not a doctor, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But it didn't help me. It's all I'll say. And I found alternative ways and and just having to go into that, finding my path back out of it. And then I kind of got pulled back into it a few years ago again. Um, which was really interesting because I had gone through a process for so long, so I could see it really clearly after this almost the second time when I went through it again and felt that pulling and just was and had a direct comparison of my life going through that process and coming out of it again. So I ended up where I am now is as much as possible, I don't use that sort of labeling language. I don't assign any of those identities to who I am, even though um, there was a process at times when they were helpful, soothing, validating, even. Um, I've just learned as well, it's been part of the process, like an evolving process of healing and recovery that's not really allowed for in our culture.
Yeah.
It's almost as if you get this label thing and you're supposed to just fix it. But then once you're fixed, I'm using all this because I hope people realize that this is not the process that helps, or that certainly helped my health and well-being. It's then assumed that once you're fixed, you're going to go right back into the culture and mindset that maybe has potentially got you unwell, stressed, and had your nervous system frazzled and had you traumatized in the first place.
Yeah. And, we find comfort in the labels. There's safety in the
Oh,
label
yeah. Yeah,
because
yeah.
we go to the doctor and we're like, I don't feel right. Something feels off. And the doctor gives us a diagnosis. And it's like, okay, thank God I have an answer. And it's that little piece. I have an answer
Mhm.
that we take and we run with. I'm guilty of this. And it was later that I realized, no, I'm not taking on this identity of this label, you know. But we do that. We take on this identity of a label, and it suddenly makes us move forward in life with that label. And we sort of get tunnel vision, right? Where it's like, well, okay, no, this is what I've been diagnosed with. Now I have to only look at this. I don't have room to look at anything else. And
Yeah.
I think what you're saying is, this ecosystem mindset is we have to look at everything else, holistically, because we're not just that
Yes. And well,
one
it's
thing.
almost like we don't have to. You can I sometimes see it like this. There's all the stuff that we can choose from. And exactly what you're saying, because I went through, like I say, I've been through this process a few times in my life and just had to learn.
Same.
The diagnosis can feel incredibly soothing and validating when you are struggling and you're stuck in it and you don't know why. And like you say, you get that relief of some sort of explanation. It's like, oh, this explains it. And you're not, you can, especially as women, you can be gaslight. We can be gaslit a lot about our symptoms. We're not even taught properly about our natural biological cycles, our all of that. And if you start looking through that tunnel vision of this explains everything, it can be helpful because we've been dealing with a lot and there's a lot of confusion. So suddenly it like shines a light on something and it gives you some clarity and you're like, oh, I can see now. I can
Right.
see
Yeah.
that makes sense. And you're like, right. But then you end up with them blinkers on. So we don't necessarily have to suddenly look at everything. And I actually think I've done a piece of writing similar to this before, but what we could start doing, and certainly what I started doing, was looking at different things. Because even just looking at one slightly different thing that might start to shape and change our worldview can open us up to more without having to look at everything all at once, which can be really overwhelming again. And this is where like the step by step thing comes in again. So just because we have a certain label doesn't actually limit us most of the time to anything unless we choose it. And actually that might be a relief to be limited for a while. Like my life was so chaotic for years. Having less to worry about or less to think about at times has been really, really soothing. But we could stay there forever. But I don't think we're intended to stay there forever. It's like everything in nature evolves and grows, and we have these periods of expansion and contraction and maturity. And just looking at just women's bodies, like the perfect example to look at it. Like you don't stay in adolescence forever. Like you
True.
go through that process of change, where you go from being a child, you're in that transition of adolescence. And we know from observation there's going to be certain symptoms, certain things that are going to happen in adolescence that show us we are going through that process.
Yeah.
And it's almost like the same with mental health and things in a way. We have these signs that something is changing. I'm not even going to say is wrong with us, but that's what we're conditioned to believe. We're conditioned to believe that this means something is wrong with us, when actually something is just changing in us. Something is wanting to evolve. Something has happened in our life, or there's some influence, or something is burning in us, and something wants to change, and it's manifesting as something different, and that can cause challenges at times. And then we're not going to stay in a state of being a fertile woman, if you like, forever. We as women are we can't stop it. It's gonna happen.
All
We're
right.
gonna go through a phase of menopause, and that's gonna cause certain symptoms.
Right.
Again, I'm using all this because it's all just natural transition. A change is happening, and we're going to see the effects of that change physically happening, physically manifesting, change in how we are, who we are, how we're responding to life. And then once we go through that transition, we'll be different again. So that's just like simple examples, but of a really important cycles in our life. And almost like, I think with retrospect, trauma recovery, mental health issues that arise, I often say that they're symptoms of just something else going on, a change within us. And the medical industry wants us to believe that those symptoms are something that needs to be fixed because there's something wrong with us. There's nothing wrong with an adolescent or a menopausal woman having symptoms because that's part of the cycle they're going through. Doesn't mean that those symptoms aren't challenging at times.
Right.
Doesn't mean that those symptoms aren't causing us to see life differently, respond to life differently, feel differently about ourselves, but they're not something we necessarily want to fix because they're part of what's naturally occurring. And we know when we go through that process, that challenge, there's going to be something different at the end of it. There's this like natural transition that happens. And a lot of our mental health, um, or what's labeled as mental health problems, when you actually talk to people, when you actually look at them, they're rooted in real human experiences that have caused a change within us.
Yeah.
Might be trauma, like I say, it could be grief, it can be even just those natural, like I said, changes that are happening of abuse and neglect, things like that, that we have never looked at, that actually the ripple effect of ignoring haven't allowed the change to happen. And so we get caught in them. We get caught in the symptoms. I
Yeah.
hope that's like making sense.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying it's like natural to be traumatized or abused or neglected, but it's a part of a lot of our experiences. And the symptoms is something telling us that there's something going on that wants to change within us because of those experiences.
Hmm.
And we have to, or we don't have to do anything, but what I found is the way to find wellness, the way to find my way back to myself to heal is to actually go through and have those experiences and find out what they're trying to tell me.
Yeah.
So dealing with like we're going back, simplifying it a little bit again. So going back to like when we're talking about like the food, like a food journey, for example, and just really when I first started to really look at my nutrition, was when I was actually dealing with a symptom, which was deep depression that I'd had for a long time. And like just looking at that, there was like I say, there was all sorts of reasons why food was an issue for me, why I wasn't taking care of myself properly, aside from what was going on with the depression, habits, neglect, which wasn't necessarily always intentional neglect. That was to do with generational stuff. That was to do with societal stuff. That was to do with trauma in myself that hadn't been dealt with. So underlying the symptom of what might be called depression, which then once I'd kind of moved on from depression a bit, a lot of anxiety came up. You know, it can be a process of unfolding because actually starting to look at that, starting to look at what was fueling or taking away or draining all my energy in the depression, deep down for me, was all just trauma, grief that I had never, ever dared to process. And doing all of this stuff and the healing was essentially, like I say, when I look back in retrospect, it's all about building enough strength and capacity to look at that and heal it. And what does that experience that I actually went through? Some of them were terrifying and horrible things.
Yeah.
What does that then mean for me? And how is that changing us? So
Yeah.
when you like go through that process and you look at when I talk about ecosystem mindset, it's like partly like looking at your life in like all these different areas. I talk about like mind, body, spirit, energy, emotion, relationships, environment. So it's like all these different systems in our lives, but in ourselves, we are a growing, living being that's going to go through these transitions. So when we're children, we don't have as much power, ability, knowledge, capacity to face some of the situations we might have been through when we're young people. As we're adolescents, we don't have enough skill. So that like the process of growing and seeing ourselves as an ecosystem that will continually grow and change, we're building this capacity all the time. So the more that we can learn to take care of ourselves and meet our needs in the way we want, the more then we can heal this stuff that's been stopping us from doing that.
Yeah.
We can't, the way I see it, we can't avoid being natural beings. We can't avoid the fact that we're an organic, evolving human being.
Yeah.
We just can't. But
Yeah.
it's like society seems to want us to, or something.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Really bizarre, isn't it?
I know. You see these things just, like they bombard you. Like, okay, well, this is wrong with you, so do this. And, I think what I try to get across to people is trauma really does mess with your physiology in your body. I mean, it does
Yeah.
really change things. Your metabolic structure, it will change. And if you don't deal with that, things only get worse. And then it's like a snowball effect. It just keeps going and more things change and more things can be disruptive. And then you're left with this whole host of disorders that now you think, man, I am really broken. Something's really wrong with me. I feel crazy. I can't I can't figure things out. And and they look for that label.
Yeah.
And I really want people to understand you just have to stop and just take a second and look at what's happened
Yes.
and go from there. And I always preach small steps,
Yes,
don't get
exactly.
overwhelmed.
Yeah, don't just small things, small steps can and will make big difference. Ultimately, don't expect overnight transformations, because that's not going to happen. Look how long you might have been struggling.
Yeah.
I always try and focus on a few simple things. One is trust in yourself, because that has been stripped from us culturally, and from a very young age. We are educated out of self-trust, to trust that we can change, evolve. We do have this intuitive guidance system when you can tap into it, which is not easy when you've been conditioned for so long, or you're living in pain, or you're confused and you're struggling. But it is possible to trust yourself
Mhm.
and to know. So, I mean, most of my trauma, especially the trauma that, not when well, maybe it's even when I was young, but I knew it was wrong, or I knew a certain situation wasn't good or right. We just don't necessarily have the power to respond to that.
Yeah.
But it's innately there that we have this sense of direction of where we need to go and what we need to steer away from. And when we just take these small steps, trust in that, experiment with that, noticing that, like I say, it kind of builds a capacity for us to be able to handle more and to heal what's going on without it being or seeming as overwhelming as what it might do initially, like boiling it right down to like each moment or each decision at a time and trying to trust in that
Yeah.
is really what the healing journey often is about. And when we have something, when we've got, as you said, when we've gone to that point where our mind is confused, our body is stressed, we might be living in pain. I mean, I had developed chronic conditions, things like that. That's how I ended up going back into that medical situation. It's not that it's all happening in your mind. It's not like a mental disorder, but there's a mental capacity to what is going on in your life that is fueling the nervous system stress that's got you completely dysregulated, which is then affecting every part of your physical body,
Yeah.
which is, it's like this accumulative effect. And we think because that's so vast, we can't fix it. And what I find when you were saying as well about, I like to believe, maybe it's not always the case, but I do have an innate, like, not, how do I say this, right?
Just say it.
People have people have good intentions, I think, right? I don't there might be agendas, and you can get caught into that where there's lots of agendas against us or trying to condition us a certain way and all of that sort of stuff, which doesn't help people's mental health. And it certainly doesn't help with anxiety or things like that if you have a nervous system response.
Yeah.
But now we've got this like global communication system, right? Through social media. And as you say, people are trying to also get attention. There's a lot of egos involved in that. People are trying to get attention. And the way you get attention is by negativity bias, is by piquing our emotions, which is going to be things like heightened anxiety, excitement. And you get a lot of this like content. The media has a lot to answer for about bad, wrong, fixing, all of that, because it appeals to our psychology. It appeals to that part of us that innately wants to feel better
Yeah.
while our nervous system is scanning for threat. So it's all like feeds. And then now that's amping up to a point where it's constant. It's coming from all channels, and you can get caught into like algorithms, communities that are feeding that narrative really strongly. It can be incredibly overwhelming
Yeah.
when you get caught into it. It
Hmm.
can literally start to take over your entire life. And at the source of it, I don't. Most people who are doing that are trying to help. They're trying to offer support in some way. But we have to remember we're all like in this system, in this culture, which is now a global culture, all from different perspectives, all at different levels, all at different capacities, all at different stages of our journey.
Yeah.
So we get all this information, and I don't think it's helpful now with a lot of retrospect, and most of my experience now is not engaging with it as much as possible. But it can be very alluring at times and very natural and very normal. So if like someone's watching this and they think, well, my community really helps me and my diagnosis really helped me and they're being triggered right now. I don't know, they're
Yeah.
possibly even still watching despite being triggered.
Yeah. Yep.
um, it's not about saying that that's wrong. It's just going, well, the question I'll have to ask, is it helpful, right? Does this help me? Because we get so our egos get so fixated on being right or wrong.
Hmm.
Oh, this is proven, or this is the right way, or you're wrong. And it doesn't actually matter when you look at the bigger picture of what's right and wrong. What matters is it helpful?
Yeah.
Is it supportive of your health and well-being right now? So it doesn't even matter if it was helpful yesterday. It could have been really helpful yesterday to be a part of that community, to be researching this diagnosis, right? That could be really helpful yesterday. But today, I've just coming into a new sense of awareness. Is it helpful for me to be looking at this content that tells me I'm broken
Yeah.
or that I need to be fixed? Is it? And you might realize, oh, actually, it's not. So what is helpful then? So if anytime I then come to a not, what is helpful? Go for a walk and sit in some grass.
Yep. Go into nature.
Because
It's like the
yeah,
answer. Yeah. Go for a walk.
because we go, well, we'll take it full circle.
Yeah.
Because the simplifying then, and what I love about nature and bringing it back to nature is that we can see, if you observe it, if you sit in it, that none of it is broken. It's all part of something else. And when you can just simplify, focus on your breath, chill for a bit, it like compounds. It's the only way that I can compare. Like I used to fight for like moments of peace and things like that, right? So you would sit, if I could sit outside or go for a walk for 10 minutes and just calm down,
Hmm.
right? Might even be 1 minute to start with. You get 1 minute of peace or mental clarity. That's a win. And it
Yes.
helped,
Yep.
right? That's a win. It helped.
Yep.
If you keep doing that, over time, you might even be able to get 10 minutes of peace and clarity. That's a that's another win. Do you know what I mean? Like, and it's just like building that up, and it healing journey might be one where sometimes, you've got to keep your focus small and simple and looking at this one thing, and then you might open up and have to look at the bigger picture and all of that whole process that can, when you look at it, seem like a big task. But it's all about those small bits of wins that build your capacity. My nervous system for most of my life did not have a capacity for peace. It didn't have a capacity to be calm. I didn't know what calm was. Even when I was doing nothing for years. Even when
Yeah.
I was trying to relax.
Yep. Been there. Yeah.
It was just always something going on or some sort of pain or something like that. But honestly, over time, them little glimmers mean that I have capacity for that now. And now I can notice the opposite. So you can notice then when you've like done all these little bits in your ecosystem that's created, that you've dealt with what's come up with honesty. Because as you said at the beginning, I know what this podcast is about. It's not about bypassing and sugarcoating and saying life's fluffy and fairies, right?
Nope.
Look at nature. Look at nature because it's not.
Yeah.
It's not. We were just talking as our little chat before we started about
Yeah.
heat waves in your country where you are, that it's really difficult. And here we've got the opposite, and you've had your family's had storms and all that. Nature will give you the answers. Nature's going to tell you, look, it's not always going to be a calm, peaceful, perfect day, but they do exist.
Yeah.
Yeah. And our capacity to like find the healing and recovery is to be able to survive all the weathers and to get through it all and still being able to be with ourselves. And that just takes sometimes a bit more of a consideration, like I say, the bigger picture
Yeah.
and just getting through little bits and building it up.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Nature heals. Nature
It
lets
just
us know what's going on. And
does.
yeah,
And
and for people out there who are thinking, well, I have no peace in my, like, I can't find peace in my life. It's too insane. Yeah, you can. Even
you
if it's
can,
just for
honestly, I
two
promise.
seconds,
Yeah.
you can find that little moment of just like, okay, I can be quiet right now. 2 seconds. And then maybe
Yeah.
up it to 4 seconds. It's that little, those little teeny tiny moments. And I've said this before on other podcasts. My grandma used to say, little puddles make big streams. And it's just those little moments that add up,
They
and
do.
they collect, and then your body starts to say, okay, we recognize this.
It
And
builds a memory, like
yeah,
and
it,
once you know it, and this is what, so just going back to natural intelligence, once you know it, once you have that natural intelligence of, this is how it feels to have that moment of peace, to connect with my calm, to connect with my breath and just calm down. Like I say, for a minute, 1 minute, that's a huge win. My body now knows how it feels.
yeah,
So I know now the difference.
yeah,
So you have gained like a natural intelligence of a tool, something that you can use, and you know how it feels when you've achieved a certain thing.
yeah,
So it's like any kind of like building that muscle, if you like, building that muscle memory, just like if you were working out, anything like that. Once you know how to do the practice and you know how it feels, you can start to then build it and do a little bit more, maybe, and a little bit more. And then the very clever part is when you can actually use it when the stakes are higher,
yeah,
when you need it. And then your body's, again, you're going to gain more intelligence and you're going to go, I was really stressed. And instead of losing you know, instead of getting triggered, I thought, I'm going to acknowledge the trigger. What happens if I then do this?
yeah,
Breathe. And it's just like you slowly learn through your natural experiences what
yeah.
helps.
It's data gathering. It's just
Yeah.
information and data gathering, and your body takes it all in, and then it recognizes it eventually, and it's like, okay, we're going to compute and we're going to output. For all of you like logical thinkers out there, like me,
Yeah, like
there's
me,
your
like that's why I love
explanation.
like the life design. Like so I talk about life design. You don't like your body's gonna do it naturally, but if you're a logical thinker, if you're a rational person, right? Be your own scientist. Collect the data.
Yeah,
Charts work. Like
yeah,
if you doubting, write it down.
yeah. Journal.
Write it down, gather the data. When we have those moments where we think, oh, nothing ever works, you can't lie to yourself anymore that way because you've got data.
Yeah,
You've actually got data
yeah,
of, oh, actually,
yeah,
this diet worked, or this exercise worked, or this tool worked, or whatever it is that helps. And when I say works, all I mean is, does it help in that moment? How does it help? What does it help with? Just become your own data gatherer.
yeah,
Gain your natural intelligence and follow your innate intuition, and it all comes together. She says,
yeah,
but it does.
yeah.
Yeah,
Eventually, it does all come together.
life's never going to be perfect. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, and I do think that's important to say.
Yeah,
There is no striving for a goal of perfect happiness, and life's always going to be this picture perfect thing. Because it's just not real. It's just not real. Look at nature again. It's not realistic. There's natural cycles, there's ebbs and flows. Life's going to happen. But our capacity to meet it without as much disruption, chaos, trauma, stress as what we've maybe gotten used to or been conditioned to or became our normal, it doesn't have to be that way. We can learn different ways to um, process, be with, experience life when it happens without it having to cause us some of the horrible symptoms that we might have been stuck with for years.
yeah, yeah. What a perfect note to end on.
Yes, I'm aware. I don't want, we don't want to go on and on and on
I
forever, but
know. I get so passionate about this topic too, and yeah, I could go on forever. But if people want to work with you, where can they find you?
do you know where is it? I do a lot of resources that I would love for people to access if they are interested in this conversation. So over at Love School, which is loveschool.uk, because I'm in the UK. There's a blog there if you're a reader. There's a blog on all different aspects of like ecosystem mindset, life design, shadow work, all the different tangents of it. I have produced courses that support people who might want to follow more of a process. But what I share is our tools and mindsets, insights for them to trust, like you, to trust your own intuition and to build your own natural intelligence. So there's, like I say, there's the blog there and all sorts of helpful content, just even for those baby steps, for those different little ways that can help you. And yeah, if people who are ready to deep dive, there's courses and things there. The main way to find us is loveschool.uk, and that's different social media handles and things, but I would go directly to the website because all the links are on there. And I do offer some one-to-one support and things, um, if anyone feels like they need it, but whatever, you can get me over there for now.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll put all those links in the show notes so people know where
Thank
to
you.
go to find you. So, well, thank you so much, Terry. This has been amazing chats, and I hope that people can take away some really valuable info on
I hope
how
so
to regulate
too.
and come back and go hug a tree.
Yes.
All right. Well, thanks for hanging out with us on Fine, I'll Talk About It.
You.
If this episode got you thinking, hit follow or subscribe so you don't miss what's next. And if you want more real talk, more perspective shifts, and more finally someone said it moments, leave a quick review. It helps me to know what topics to discuss next. You can connect with me on Instagram at Inspired Action Wellness or my website, Inspired Action Wellness, for more inspiration like this. And we will see you in the next episode.